This message comes from Vital Farms, who works with small American farms to bring you pasture-raised eggs. Click the play button to hear from pasture-raised egg farmer Tanner Pace, who shares the sights and sounds he and his hens experience on the rolling hills of his family farm in southern Missouri.
There are no SNAP food benefits for millions of Americans today for the first time since the country's largest anti-hunger program began 6 decades ago. On Friday, 2 federal judges said the pause was likely to be unlawful. President Trump says he's open to keeping SNAP going despite the government shutdown, but it is not clear how or when that might happen. NPR's Jennifer Ludden joins us. Jennifer, thanks for being with us.
Hi there.
Trump administration says there's just no money available to fund SNAP. What did both of the federal judges say about that?
Well, they said Congress has provided more than $5 billion in emergency funds, and it's for exactly this kind of situation. They rejected the administration's argument that it cannot legally use that. They said it not only can, but must. In Rhode Island, Judge John McConnell Jr. called for this to happen as soon as possible. The other judge, Indira Talwani in Boston, said officials could also tap more money from customs revenue, but she left that decision up to them. Both judges gave the administration until Monday to come back with a plan for how it will proceed.
But does this mean that people who count on this assistance might see it sometime soon?
That is a good question, and the only answer right now is we really don't know. I mean, first, will the administration appeal? Second, if they agree to only tap the contingency funds, that falls well short of SNAP's November budget, which is $9 billion. So the people would not get the full amount they qualify for. And in that case, the administration has said, calculating partial payments is a logistical nightmare that could take time, especially in the middle of a shutdown. And then as for President Trump, a few hours after these rulings, he addressed them in a social media post. He said he's instructed his lawyers to clarify with the court how they can legally fund SNAP. And if they do, he said, it will be my honor to provide funding just like I did with the military and law enforcement pay.
If the administration decides to pay people at least some part of their regular SNAP food benefits, how would that break down? How would it work?
We really don't know. Again, this has not happened before. I've not seen a public plan for how to do it. I did speak, though, with an Agriculture Department employee who works on SNAP, and they agreed it would be challenging and even beyond logistics. This person asked me not to use their name for fear of retribution, and also they're not authorized to speak with media. But they said, for one thing, if you have partial funding, do you give it only to the most needy? Or do you give people, half their regular amount, maybe 3/4? And states would want to say in that. But also, how do you divide partial funding among states? I know the employee wondered if this administration might decide to give some states more SNAP money than others.
Jennifer, where does this leave the millions of people who aren't getting federal food aid beginning today?
Scott, it leaves them in need. It is a lot of money that is disappearing from people's food budgets. We don't know for how long. Food policy experts say no amount of amping up food banks can come anywhere close to making up this difference, but of course it does help, and we see more states and cities shifting money for it. Soon after yesterday's rulings, Oklahoma's governor announced a vote to send $1 million a week to food banks for SNAP recipients for up to 7 weeks if needed.
NPR's Jennifer Ludden, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And we're joined now by NPR senior political contributor Ron Elving. Ron, thanks for being with us.
Good to be with you, Scott.
What do you believe are the political calculations of the Trump administration when it comes to SNAP benefits?
No one wants to be in charge when families are forced to go without food. But here we have the Trump administration going to some lengths to find $5 billion to pay the military, while refusing to take a similar amount from a contingency fund specifically meant for food assistance. They call that a rainy day fund for a hurricane or an earthquake, but 2 federal judges have now said it sure looks like an emergency to them. So now Trump says maybe his lawyers can find a way to release the money after all. And when you think about it, this comes in the same news cycle with release of photos of new gold fixtures in the White House bathrooms and news stories about a lavish Great Gatsby party at Mar-a-Lago last night hosted by the president. Not great optics.
The Senate Majority Leader John Thune once more rejected the president's call to eliminate the filibuster. President sees that as a way of ending the government shutdown
You know, I have shit
on
in my
his
fucking
terms.
hand. I'm gonna feed some fucking
But
children
his
now.
Republican allies in the Senate
Christopher, they're
resist
jumping
his
in
call.
this tent like no tomorrow on this pot.
The filibuster, that 60-vote requirement in the Senate, empowers the minority party regardless of which party that is. And Republicans have long memories. They know they could be back in the minority again themselves someday, maybe fairly soon. And they can easily imagine Democrats with the Senate majority making major moves such as expanding the Supreme Court or granting statehood to the District of Columbia, things the filibuster has prevented in the past. Now, presidents, of course, have long chafed at the filibuster, and Trump is no exception. It's a barrier to his program in the present, and that matters more to him than what might happen to the Senate in some future situation years from now.
Of course, President Trump returned from a tour of Asia this week. Would you call the trip a success?
It certainly looked like a success, not just the public spectacles, but also the pile of trade deals and other negotiations that seemed to be successfully completed. Now, we've also seen that with Trump and trade, much that seems set can shift. That's part of what he seems to like about tariffs. He can impose them and then change them at will. He's done that many times. And the current Congress has not yet chosen to assert its own role and rein him in. So tariffs become tools for his personal manipulation, which plays to his strengths as a negotiator and as a showman. All the same, there would seem to be real gains made on this trip in terms of securing strategic materials and also in de-escalating the talk of trade war with China. That's certainly good news for business and worldwide. Trump also worked hard on this trip to burnish his credentials as a peacemaker, witnessing the signing of a deal between Thailand and Cambodia over border disputes and so on. He was plainly displeased, however, that the whole trip got upstaged by the government shutdown at home.
Of course, open enrollment begins today on the Affordable Care Act marketplace. It's going to be on the minds of a lot of people this weekend, isn't it?
Yes, it is. All of Washington and the media have been talking about these Obamacare subsidies for months now, but we tend to forget that a large percentage of Americans have yet to focus on it, or on some of the Medicaid cuts that are coming as well. Now, government health programs often have high sign-up rates in counties that voted for Trump in 2024, and in some cases by big margins. This is especially true of Medicaid. The news organization Axios has analyzed Medicaid data across the country and found there were equal shares of people who were covered by Medicaid in 2023 who lived in states that voted for Trump and states that voted for Democrat Kamala Harris. So with the new billing notices going out today across the country, Scott, there's a good chance that some of the political pain is going to be felt across the political spectrum as well.
NPR's Ron Elving. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and particularly in a week like this with so much happening. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Scott.